It's an honor to present my bill, HR 6434, the Japanese American World War II History Network, and to speak on its behalf. Several weeks ago, we celebrated a very unfortunate milestone. On February 19th, we marked the 80th anniversary of the signature of Executive Order 9066. That was signed in 1942 by President Roosevelt, shortly after the start of World War II. This executive order authorized the evacuations of all people deemed a threat to national security from the West Coast, which included anyone who was at least of 1/16th Japanese American descent. Those people were forcibly relocated from their homes and incarcerated for the duration of the war in internment centers. Many of these were Japanese American parents who had sons serving in the military overseas, risking their life in defense of our country, and yet they were forced to move out of their homes, to surrender their properties, and to surrender their freedom for the duration of the war. These Japanese Americans were first relocated to assembly centers. The one that's closest to my district is in Santa Anita. It was located at a racetrack. Over 10,000 Japanese Americans were housed there. Over 8,000 of them were housed in the horse stables in subhuman conditions. From there, they were dispersed across the western United States to internment centers. The best preserved of those centers is the one in Manzanar, located in my district. And if you're not familiar with where Manzanar is, it's in Inyo County in California. It is an incredibly remote place. It is unspeakably beautiful, but also very harsh. Frequently, temperatures reach over 100 degrees there in the summer. It's almost always below freezing there in the winter. It is a very, very difficult place to live. And yet the Japanese Americans who were interred there bore those conditions stoically throughout the duration of the war. In retrospect, we now recognize the injustice of the actions that our country took towards those Japanese Americans in World War II. And that's why we preserve places like Manzanar and the other internment centers across our country as a reminder of what happened in 1942 and what we must never allow to happen again. This bill will establish the Japanese American World War II History Network to be administered by the National Park Service. This uses the model of existing networks administered by the Park Service, including the African American Civil Rights Network, the Underground Railroad Network to Freedom, and the Reconstruction Era National Historic Network that are also administered by the National Park. This will allow National Park users to view maps interactively showing locations on the network, brief history of each site, and information on which sites are open to the public to be visited. This is very important because it draws attention to the historical significance of these sites such as Manzanar, and increases their profile with the current generations of Americans. The power of history is to gain perspective and learn from our past. By bringing transparency to the story of Japanese American internment, we can ensure that that kind of injustice never again occurs within our country. So I thank you for the opportunity to present this bill today. Would respectfully request your support. And I'd also like to ask unanimous consent from the committee to add letters of support to the congressional record. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.